Neville Johnson is on the show this week, and he is somebody I've known about for a little while. Not only are you a new author of an awesome book, but you are somebody that's kind of been in the sphere of influence I've been kind of taking notice of the past little while. And you reached out to me and you said, "Hey, I'm doing a book with Dead Reckoning Collective." And I'm like, absolutely, you are. Amazing. They're some of the coolest guys and some of the best publishers out there for people like us. But not only that, is you've done a great job with this, man. And you wrote this on your own completely.
Yep. Yes, I did. All by myself.
All by yourself. That's a feat and a half, man. To get something from vision to greenlit all the way through is a testament of your dedication and hard work. But it's a really well written collective. Is it poetry? Is what it would fall under?
Yes, I would say it's war poetry. Yeah.
War poetry. Yeah. And it seems like there is so much coming out of the past 20 years, which is so amazing, because it doesn't seem like a lot of people were having these types of conversations after Vietnam, World War II, and so on. So it's nice to see that this next generation of warfighters is finding another way to heal. And it seems like through writing, we are seeing a lot of people find themselves again. So welcome to the show. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out the man behind the book, and let's really dive in, because you can't write poetry like this unless you've been through some really, really difficult things. That's for sure.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, it's been a long journey. It's been a long journey from the initial getting into Sangin, Afghanistan, and to staying there, and then the homecoming. So it's been a long journey, and then even longer having to sit down and having to put pen to paper. And once that occurred, it was the floodgates went open, and it was hard to control. And I thought putting pen to paper was the ideal method for me to release it all and to tell my story.
Okay, well, let's start at the beginning, because from what I gather, you come from a line of service. So that seemed like a natural fit for you to go into the military. What year did you join?
I joined late. I was 26 and I joined in 2003. It was at a time, I think it was during the second invasion. I could see all the images on TV or on Sky News, and that sort of spurred me to join as well.
And what is it? What is it about the military way? So you were 26. What were you doing prior? Because I know the British, you guys follow a different line of education, meaning you seem to be out of school a lot earlier than the rest of North America. So how do you jump from going to being in high school? Because there's a period of time there. I'm assuming you were working or doing something else with your life.
Right, so that I was doing the odd job, but because I'm actually from South Africa, so that's where I grew up, in South Africa. And then it was in 2000 that I went over to the UK, done the odd job beyond there, traveling, doing the old ticket tour. And then I ended up working as a personal trainer in London, of all places, because I've done the same job in South Africa, qualified in South Africa as a personal trainer. And at that time I thought, I want to stay longer, what can I do? But it was actually the dream of following my dad's footsteps, because he served in the South African police force. My mom was a nurse, my uncle was a firefighter. He's my grandfather, he was a pilot in the Second World War. So it was in the family, everyone wearing uniform. And it was at that stage I thought it was my calling, it was a duty to actually go and do that. And I thought it was fitting for me to eventually step in and join the British Army. And join an infantry unit as well.
And what made you leave South Africa? Because that seems, I mean, that's an interesting place to grow up. I know quite a few South Africans now, and you hear a mix of reviews of what that's like to grow up.
Yeah, it was an interesting environment. At the time, I just felt, even though the country is so big, I just felt the walls closing in. I just felt constricted. I just felt claustrophobic, and I wanted to go and explore. It wasn't because of the violence in South Africa. It wasn't because the crime. I just felt like I want to go and travel. I want to go and see the world. I want to go and make it big. I want to go and meet people and just travel. And I thought going to the UK would be a good jump from there and getting into America. But I just thought at the time I had to leave. I had to get on my own journey and just get out there and travel and go and just meet people.
What year did you leave South Africa to go to the UK?
Oh, that was in 2000. In June, July, that month in 2000, I went over. I've never flown before. I've never stepped foot on a plane. No helicopters, nothing. I just thought, I need to go. I had many friends that stayed behind. They would marry their high school girlfriend and would stay in the area. But I just thought I had to leave. I had to go. It was my duty. It was a sense of purpose. I just thought, I'm going to go. And I've never looked back since.
That's wild. That's an interesting. What's fascinating to me is how the UK military is made up. A lot of people don't understand that when you look at different militaries across the world, the UK is made up of a basically a smorgasbord of all different countries that fall under the British military, under the UK. And when you're American, yes, you do crossover with other countries when you're doing training, but there is not other individuals part of America, some other place in the world that are also part of your military who aren't on your continent. And so you've got, the Canadians, you've got the Americans who all sort of work together. And then you've got the British, but that is a compilation of the Fijians, that's South Africans, that's the Irish, that's the English, that's the Scottish. There's a whole whack of you together. And culturally, that is a lot to handle when you first start to figure out how people work, what people think of each country's. And there's always something to be said about the British because they have a reputation of getting things done and going through very difficult things. Myself having firsthand experience with the British, I would say they're by and large one of the best militaries I've ever gotten the privilege to work with. And I think what makes them so strong is how multicultural they are, because there is so many different countries that specialize in a lot of different things. And when you put them all together, you get something really magical. And working with South Africans, there's a personal place in my heart for some of those guys. But they are definitely a different bunch. You guys are definitely a different bunch. Your heads are screwed on a little differently. And what you consider crazy is definitely a lot different than Americans and Canadians. That's for sure. I don't know if it's because you grew up in an area where violence was more prevalent. It was a normal conversation. There was a lot of really serious things happening in your country. So I don't know if that just makes a harder person or a harder soldier, but it seems like you handle things a lot differently.
Yeah, I would say it's the background. I would say it's the upbringing. It's the leadership from the dad in the family. It was a different life back then for us young kids, and I would say that definitely helped a hell of a lot with going through basic training in the British Army. But it's definitely the background. It's definitely the upbringing, how they go about doing things.
Talk to me about that a little bit, because I know of an individual who's been on my show. He's you guys call him fisters. We just call him artillery. He was a foo, and his name is Danny Ventur, and he is from South Africa. And he is a really, really cool guy to work with, but also just an interesting person. And he talks to me a lot about South Africa, and some of the stories he tells blow my mind, because if any American or Canadian had to do what they did in order to get their children into school, and the amount of guns they had to carry and who they had to fight back with just to have any rights, I think most of us would struggle. So talk to me about your childhood a little bit, because that's got to be a wild experience.
Sure. Yeah, there's I was very I would say lucky to have a mom and a dad and an assistant being in that environment. It was a lot of good times growing up in South Africa. My dad, very, very strict, because he served in the South African police force. So it was a strict household of, there was a lot of responsibility from us to go to school and pay attention, and listen to him, and I looked up to him a hell of a lot. I looked up to my mom a hell of a lot, she was a nurse. My dad was a police officer, so it was in that household where he...
Hey humans, this episode of the Brass and Unity podcast is sponsored by Cured Nutrition. I want to talk to you guys about sleep. We all know that sleep is one of the most important tools when getting your life together and optimizing your wellness and general well-being. Cured Sleep Bundle, which combines their best-selling Zen and most potent CBN, is the answer to guaranteeing that you'll get a full night of sleep every single night. Zen is a blend of functional mushrooms, adaptogens, and full-spectrum cannabinoids. The CBN extract is a lesser-known cannabinoid found in the hemp plant. But these supplements were designed to support the two most critical stages of your body's natural sleep cycle, REM sleep and non-REM, deep sleep. Cured's raw CBN oil contains 30 milligrams of CBD and 5 milligrams of CBN Together, the CBD and CBN create a synergistic whole body effect. When it kicks in, you'll notice every inch of your body soften into a deeper state of relaxation, as if you're laying beneath the comfort of a weighted blanket. Once you're asleep, Zen is there to ensure that your body is successfully cycling out of non-REM, deep sleep, into REM, and back again. Some people can't fall asleep, others can't stay asleep, and then those that just fall asleep, stay asleep, but struggle to spend enough time in each sleep stage. No matter what is keeping you from your true rest and restoration, the sleep bundle is your solution. Think of it as the 1-2 punch for the body and brain reset. So I've been struggling with sleep for a little while now, dealing with TBI and other ailments, but I'm telling you right now, this stuff is legit. It gets me to sleep, it keeps me asleep, and I don't wake up feeling groggy. I don't have any of the side effects that any other type of medication or CBD product that sometimes happen. I've also been able to focus a lot more on what my body needs because I'm able to get into a deeper sleep. This stuff is amazing, guys, and I want you to go give it a shot. Cured is giving all of our listeners 20% off. So you can go and grab it at curednutrition.com/brass and check out. That's right, Cured Nutrition, CURED nutrition.com/brass, and get an extra 20% off. Improve your sleep. It'll improve your life.
He would look at us, and then he would then guide us properly, as kids. It was a great environment to grow up in. It was rough. It was hard at times, but yeah, it was good.
Awesome, man. I can see that took you back a little bit there. I see there was a moment of pause in a couple of those. It seems like you were going down memory lane a little. It is a place that creates a harder human. I would for sure agree to that. I think that it creates a different type of person. I think there's also something to be said for a strong male presence in the family, and what that does and guides, and how it can guide, young humans into being successful humans. And I think not going down this direction, but I think that's kind of what's missing a lot is strong people, strong men who are willing to step up for their families and guide and lead in the way that people need to be led. And I think that's why South Africans are so gnarly, is because there's so much baked into the way of the world down there and how difficult it is. And when you have more difficulty, you create a harder human. And that often creates children that can handle adversity a lot better. I want to understand how you went from, okay, I've seen all these things on TV. 9/11 had happened only 2 years. And you said, okay, I'm going to go join. I obviously understand the life of service, and it seems like your family life of purpose is a big reason to why you guys are successful. But what was it? Why infantry? Why did you want to go run and gun? What is it about that really just pulled you towards the military?
It was definitely the fact that my family, I come from a family where everyone served in uniform, and for me it was rough. I did try in South Africa. It was quite a few years ago where I tried to get into the South African police force. It didn't work out due to the fact that South Africa was going through a change from being apartheid South Africa into a different environment, a rainbow nation, so to speak. I did try, it didn't work out, and then I tried again in the UK to join the police force. They said, yeah, you can join, fill in the forms, we can help you. However, we don't help you with your immigration status, so you have to legally live here and work here for X amount of time. And because you're on a holiday working visa, we can't help you. And I thought, oh, bugger, what now? And then I had a good friend that said, well, if you want to stay longer within the UK, go and join the British Army, because you're part of the Commonwealth.
I love that.
Them. And I was sold at go and join the British Army. I thought, great, that's uniform. It's close enough. And they said, because you're part of the Commonwealth, you can join. You're like Fiji, Canada, quite numerous other countries, Jamaica. However, you just got to pass this 2-day course in Pirbright in the UK. Once you do that, then you can go do your 6 months basic training. I walked into the recruiting office, and then they would give you sort of 3 options you can pick. My first choice was to join the parachute regiment, and the second choice I thought would be, that was fitting at the time, would be to join an English regiment, which was the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers. They had 2 battalions at the time. The 1st Battalion Armoured, that were based in Germany at the time. And then their second battalion, it was a light role battalion, and they were based in Belfast, Northern Ireland at the time. I thought, okay, I'll pick that as my second option, and my third option, I think, was engineers, But I had my heart set on joining the parachute regiment. And in order to do that, they had a fitness test, which was 1.5 miles, which I think you had to complete in 9 minutes, 30 seconds, I failed that. And then I got bumped to my second choice, which was the Fusiliers. And so I went over basic training in, I think in the north somewhere, in Catterick. I was there for 6 months, and it was an amazing experience. I loved every moment of it, for the 6 months I was there.
How long is basic training then? Is it 6 months total?
6 months, yeah. 6 months total, yeah.
Is that battle school included? So that's not just basic training though.
Yeah, that's everything. That's to teach you how to be an infantry soldier, how to live in the field, how to operate weapon systems, combat, closing with the enemy, bayonet, weapon systems, everything.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure there, because when we say basic training, that's a 12 or 13 week program, and that's just basic soldiering. After that, then that's when you go do more trade specific. So like battle school for infantry or artillery, you go to DP1, and your SQ is just your weapon. So it sounds like that's why I was like 6 months. That's a long basic training there for a second. But with
it was a long
school,
basic training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
That's interesting.
It was. Yeah. Yeah, and it's even longer if you get injured, then they would back squad you, which means then you'll stay longer. So instead of your 6 months being 6 months, it will be 7 or 8 months.
We had individuals like that in basic training where if they couldn't meet the physical qualifications, they would go up to I think it was the 13th floor, which was a polite way of saying fat camp, and you would just work out until you could do the physical fitness test, and then you would get and then you would get put into another group that was going through, like another class that was going through, and so you would have to wait essentially. So it was advantageous to go in good shape so that you didn't end up having to do that. But I've also seen individuals who get injured, and then they're held for a year, and it holds them back. They're basic. That would be so frustrating for me. I was lucky enough to not to do that, but I can see why that's not a fun state to be in. Oh my gosh. So you go from one fairly violent country to hanging out in the UK for a little bit, up to another fairly violent space, which is Northern Ireland, which,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know how much I want to get into this, but I'd be curious to have a little bit of that conversation, because I don't know how many listeners, with our listener base being predominantly male Americans, if they really understand what I mean by violence in Northern Ireland, because I'm assuming they're like just Irish people and alcohol, but Northern Ireland it's a different war zone.
Yeah, it was different. I mean, prior to that, I had no idea. I mean, I knew that they had troops there. I knew that they had the British Army there, and I knew about the conflict, and I knew about what happened in the past, but all the other finer details I had no clue about. For me, I just wanted to get into my into the infantry and go and join my unit. And I thought it would be fitting to go and join them. When I got there, it was a big eye opener. It put me right in my place. It was very surreal having to have done that particular tour, because you'll be in a uniform and you'll be going in a vehicle or foot patrols, and you would see normal people. You would see people going to shopping, going to school. People. I don't know what's normal. How do you define normal?
You were seeing Western-looking white people. Hey, humans. I know you've all been seeing me drink HVMN's Ketone IQ lately. This is a game changer. Jet fuel in a bottle. I use Ketone IQ for everything in my life, whether it's running, cycling, podcasting, or just the extra boost that my brain needs. I won't lie, it helps push me to the next level in all things. I love Ketone IQ and what HVMN stands for. Go grab some shots today at hvmn.com and use the code BRASS20 and save.
Just going about their own business, going to school, going to the shops, and you're there patrolling, you think, what am I doing here? This is surreal, and you've got your weapon system with you, it's loaded, patrolling the streets of Belfast. I had no idea. I had no prior knowledge about the massive history of the country, and I was put in my place rather quickly. I had to learn quickly. I had to learn about the history, why we're there, why they had the British Army there. and all the history with the place. It was really surreal. Then you would be walking and then driving the vehicles. You can hear these, because we had these snatch Land Rovers, light armored vehicle, and then we'd be driving along the road and you can hear these things pinging off the side. I think, well, what's that? And you find these young kids bricking us, throwing bricks and stones at the vehicle, and they'll be yelling up, all these things at us, because anyone that they would notice that's in the British Army uniform, they would hate. They hate the Brits, they hate us being there. But then the one side, there's families that they don't want us being there. But we were in the middle, because you've got the Catholics and the Protestants, and a lot of times, they just go about it, and then you smack in the middle.
Well, I can see why you didn't want to talk about religion, because every war is fought over religious reasons. It's the saddest thing when you go to places like Ireland, and if you drive, X amount of hours, you're in a war zone. You're in a real war zone. The idea of walking around, how do I say this nicely? We often go to places where others don't look like us, who are much poorer than us, and that seems to be acceptable to carry around a semi-automatic weapon, and that seems okay. But then you go to places like Ireland, where you're walking around where everyone looks like you, but yet you are carrying a semi-automatic weapon. And that right there on its own is the saddest thing, because none of this needs to happen. None of the violence needed to be a part of life in Ireland, but it's all based on religion. It's the saddest thing is that religion dictates whether people hate each other or not. And if we could look past religion and realize that we're human beings and we all without skin look the exact same, we would probably stop fighting these wars. And I understand that, there's a level of having to fight back to protect yourself and your families and things like that. It's no different anywhere else in the world. You see it in Israel, you see it in Ireland, you see it in the Middle East, you see it everywhere. There's always going to be a war over religion. So I can understand why religion is something that's a sticking subject for you, which I think it is for a lot of people, to be completely honest with you. I think it's more of a subject where I don't want to discuss it because it harms more than it's good for a lot of people. And it brings up a lot of trauma. And I fully accept and understand why that would be traumatic. But going from, I love that you said the word tour, like a tour in Ireland, I can't wrap my brain around a tour in a place like Ireland. It's too beautiful and it seems too lovely. But the reality is, how long has that war been going on? How long have soldiers from the UK have to go to deploy to Ireland?
It's been ages. I mean, think 70s, 60s, I've heard stories about Sunday Bloody Sunday, what happened with the Paras and all that. And then you go to these places and you work with the Paras, the parachute regiment, and you go to these places and it kind of, some areas it makes sense. Other areas, I can't fathom. It's difficult to explain. You go to an area, there's kids playing in the streets, going to school, people going to the shops, and you're there in this armored vehicle. And then you get people on the one side hating you, others smiling at you, waving at you. It feels surreal. It's a normal, suburban environment. You're patrolling the streets, you think it feels like I shouldn't be there, and then it's classified as a residential tour, they say. And then you get the marching season on the one side. It's where you've got the Protestants and the Catholics when they will do these parades, and it's during these parades that the one side will then taunt the other side, and then that's where public order, right control, and then we're in the middle, and then that's where you bring out the shields and the hickory sticks, and then you place in the middle, and then you assist the Northern Ireland Police Force during that.
And does this happen same time every year?
Yeah, same time every year. So they would have these marching bands and these colors, and they would march on the one side, and there's this big thing, the peace wall, and then you'll be in that area to control or to restore order and work alongside the police to bring order.
Well, okay, that blows my mind. If we know it's going to happen every year, why do we keep repeating the same behavior? I don't I don't understand. I don't understand it. That makes no goddamn sense to me. That sounds like the most irrational behavior. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Ireland blows my mind. I don't understand that place. I'm not trying to pretend that I do. It is a wild thing that there is still fighting happening and people are doing rotations to Ireland on a regular basis as if we need to be continually fighting each other over ridiculous things. And people will say, well, it's not ridiculous. It's their right to practice religion, da 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 da, and have freedom. And I get that. I fully get that. But any place where we have to have semi-automatic weapons on a street where there's children should be rethought as to why we are acting the way we are acting. That's my personal opinion. I digress. So Ireland is your first tour. How many times did you go to Ireland?
Just the one. So it was because the battalion that I joined, it was a light role. So meaning that they move every 2 years. So okay. Prior to that, they were based in Germany. They were there for 2 years. And then they went over to Belfast. They were there for 2 years. And it was during that time that I then deployed from one operational tour or residential tour that I deployed to Iraq in 2005. It was surreal again because a lot of the training was done in Northern Ireland. Then we flew back to the UK to do some more training there to help us to get ready for the operational tour in Iraq. And then we flew back to Northern Ireland and got on transport, and then went over to this big military airbase, and then flew over to Iraq, and yeah, I was there for 6 months as my first operational tour, which I volunteered because I wanted to go. I wanted to go and engage in and fight the enemy, and I was roaring to go.
And I'm assuming that was all because of lovely propaganda films and
yeah,
war stories.
It was all the war stories and the fact that you were based in this barracks with all these other men, training to fight. Your role, we were infantry soldiers, you are trained to close in with the enemy, capture or kill, regardless of the weather, the season, or the terrain. That was your main role, to go in and close in with the enemy, and it felt like a caged lion, you're roaring to go in, and then with all these other men, you've done your training, and you would see all these other videos of previous units, what they've done, and they were in contact and shooting at the militia, and you thought, I'm gonna have that, I want to have a go. And then we got there, and I thought, well, this is shit. This is a big letdown, a massive anticlimax. I thought, I'm not gonna volunteer ever again. And I was told, when you join basic training, when you join unit, one of the best things to do is don't volunteer for shit. If they say there's a motorcycle course going on, we need volunteers, don't put your hand up, So I played the gray man very well at the time. But I thought it was again, there was a sense of duty, a sense of purpose. I want to volunteer for this. I did. I got in, and we got there. And again, it was okay, this is different, You've seen all the videos, you've seen the other units patrolling, and what they've done, but it's not until you get there. It's not until you meet with the locals and you're there and you feel the heat in your face, and you're patrolling the streets and you're driving and you think, oh shit, is that an IED? Is this an IED? But the training that we had in Northern Ireland definitely helped, definitely paved the way for the operational tour that we experienced in Iraq.
So what was Iraq like for you? Where did you go, and how was that?
It was a phenomenal experience. We're based in Basra, southern Iraq, so they gave a lot of authority over to, not authority, the Brits were basically based in southern Iraq, and then further upwards it was for the Americans. It was a long tour. Like I said, it was a big laid down, so to speak, because we were trying to close in with the enemy, capture or kill, and go and fight. And we were off the lead in Iraq, and at the end of it, I never fight any rounds, but it was at the time, I felt like, yeah, I've made a difference. But then looking back, I thought, nah, there was maybe on that particular day, maybe trying to help the kids, maybe we made some difference for that particular day. But looking back now, it's been what, more than 20 years. I thought, nah, there wasn't really a big difference at all, you know.
It might not have. I'm going to invite you to think about that a little differently, because I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot. I think about that in my deployment a lot. I think about that with a lot of people who tell me their stories. Yeah, I don't feel like we made a difference. I don't feel like we made a difference. I think the fact that you took time at any point to give any of the children and show them respect and care and kindness, you don't know that they've never experienced that before. You don't know that if they've ever got that positive experience with a soldier. You know, you're not aware of, you know, did they lose their whole families to soldiers? Like the influence in that moment that you gave them positive light instead of anger and hate and frustration and you know, violence, that could have changed a kid, man. You'd be surprised. Soldiers don't understand in the time how much of an impact just being positive to another person can really be. A smile makes a difference. A moment of pause makes a difference. That the moment where you decided not to point the gun instead of got into their face and talk to them makes a difference, man. So, you know, I think if you look at the grand scheme, yeah, none of us feel like a lot of difference was made in the past 20 years. Of course, why would we? Look at how it has ended. But I think ultimately we have to look at those moments where instead of being violent, we decided to be kind. And instead of overlooking someone and just, you know, pushing them off, ignoring them, you gave them a time of day where somebody had a gun but wasn't violent with them. I think there's a positive to that, man. So be patient with yourself. It's a hard thing to see on the outside, but I'd invite you to try to remember that compassion goes a long, long way in humans.
Yeah. I think it's at the time I thought I was making a difference, but it was a phenomenal experience working in that environment and then seeing the how they were living at the time, you know, the shacks and the environment of it, you know, and it just, it definitely opened up my eyes. It definitely did, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, coming from South Africa, going to the UK and then popping off to Ireland, but then going to a country that, I mean, it's one thing to go to Ireland, you know, things move very similar to the way they do in the UK, other than, you know, people are a little more violent up north. But then when you go to the Middle East, where everything walks different, talks different, smells different, heats different, everything is different. It feels like you're on the face of another planet.
Yeah.
To imagine that only a few hour plane ride away, you can be in a place like that and everything be so drastically upside down and different, temperature wise, culturally, it's a shock to the system. So I can for sure see that. When you came back from Iraq, how was that for you going back to you went back to the UK after that?
No, at that stage, the battalion had already up and moved. So they've packed up and they've gone, and then they moved over to Cyprus, which is a Greek, you know, Cyprus?
Yeah. So the Canadians, because we're Commonwealth, they go there for decompression. I did not. Yeah, I've heard lots about that. I did not get that privilege to go decompression. I was sent home to the hospital before everyone else. But my buddy Jez and everyone else I know is like, Cyprus. I'm like, no, I can't. I don't have the same feelings. But you guys got posted to Cyprus then, yeah.
Cyprus, yeah, the first year, because it was a 2-year posting. So we got to the first year. It was amazing. It was just gorgeous and beautiful. Our barracks were based on the beach. We had our own private beach. It was beautiful, you know. We would start early, finish early, go to the beach, go to Ayia Napa, which is more for the tourists, but all the clubs, all the bars. It was beautiful. It was great. You know, we'd done some training, but however, the second year we were hardly there. We were all on operational tours. You know, we were all on tours away. Smaller units, smaller sections, platoons were then tasked to go back to Iraq, or tasked to go to Afghan, and it was non-stop. We were hardly there. If we had been there, it would have been training, full-on training.
Yep.
Because it was in 2006. Then we went back to Iraq, you know, which I didn't volunteer for. I thought, I'm not going to put my hand up. I'm not going to volunteer for shit. I'm going to just keep my head down. But I went anyway, you know. I got picked. I thought, okay, cool. I was told, and this is the orders. You're going to go, and I went. We're there for about 4 months. It was the same, no rounds, you know. I didn't fire any rounds. It was a quiet tour. But we got back, went on Christmas leave. As soon as we got back, we got called to go to the big square, all of us, the whole battalion, and we got told, welcome back from your Christmas leave. We're going to now start training to go to Afghan.
Oh, wow.
And it was a whole different vibe, whole different, feeling. We all knew it was about to kick off. It's full on. This is going to be different. It's not Iraq. It's not that at all. It was a different vibe, different feeling. And I think that's what everyone wanted. That's what I wanted. And we were ready. And then off we went.
So what year and what month did you get to Afghan?
2007, early April, I think it was.
Okay. And how long were you in Afghan for that deployment?
4 months.
So did you always do shorter deployments? I mean, you did a 6-month one in Iraq, but did you do always 4 months again after that? Or did you start to have longer?
No, it was because of our role. Because we're based in Cyprus, we got placed on operational theatre standby, which meant if they needed any assistance from any other units, they would then task, say, the Fusiliers or any other units. They were placed on theatre reserve on standby. For example, you might be placed on standby and ready to move in 48 hours, 72 hours, or and then your bags were already packed, your burdens packed. You were good to go, so you're placed on standby. So if required, but it was that stage where we had teams all over the place. We had teams in Iraq for the third or fourth time. We had teams, and they went to Afghan in 2006. So all depends who they needed. If they need extra assistance from any other units, and then they would call upon us, and we were the ones that were tasked to go and assist.
So it's almost like a QRF, if you will. If
kind
necessary.
of, yeah,
for a larger group. So when you got to Afghan, you flew into CAF, I'm guessing, or where were you?
Bastion.
Oh, that's right.
Bastion.
Yeah, UK.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because you got there at the beginning of fighting season, which if people don't understand what that is, that's basically where the Taliban and anybody else are growing their opium, and this is the time where we like to burn everything down, and they like to keep everything so that they can make a ton of money to keep funding their terrorism. So talk to me about getting into Bastion. Talk to me about that feeling of getting into Afghanistan for the first time.
Man, the first week they were just spent training. It was funny because they would then give us all these extra equipment which we've never seen, never laid eyes on, and they would say, okay, cool, so this is your metal detector, and this is how it works. That's how you look for IEDs, and this is your missile launcher. Bits and pieces of equipment that, because of supplies and we never had, so a lot of it was shipped straight to Afghan. So you had no time then to train on these new bits of equipment. You didn't have hands on. We would look at the pamphlets. We would be told, okay, you're gonna get all these extra bit of equipment, and then once you get to theatre, you'll spend time to have a quick, feel a quick train on the range, and then off you go. So the first week is basically spending time with prepping your gear, getting hands on with some of the equipment that you only heard about. It's a quick sort of train, and then got split into different sort of, they call it chalks, meaning this is the one group that will get on the Chinook to go and fly to your fob, and then the next day this chalk group of men will then fly over. It was just basically getting ready, getting hands on some of the medical gear that they issued the troops, and some of the equipment. Quickly spend time on the range, zeroing your weapon system, and off you go.
What fob did you guys go out to first?
Excuse me. Fob Jackson, but back then it was known as Sangin DC.
Okay. I can't say I've heard of that one. Whereabouts was that located?
Excuse me. Near the what's it, in Sangin town, very close to the river. It was basically a big farm sort of building, a big farm. I think it was taken over by the Brits, and it was fortified by the engineers with big Hesco bastion walls, and made that into a fob. And then later on it got changed because there was a soldier was killed there, and then it was named after him, and it was named Fob Jackson. I think he was killed in 2006 or early 2007. But for us, it was just known as Sangin DC, just a big fob right in the center of Sangin town, so to speak.
So busy area, lots movement, a lot of movement parts, like a lot of stuff going on. How did that soldier pass? Was that from mortars or
I'm not
small
sure.
arms?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know. Yeah, I think it was already killed by the time we got there. It was either in late 2006 or early 2007.
Yeah,
Before we got there.
Yeah, when somebody says they've been killed on a fob, they're, my immediate reaction is it incoming mortars, which was if an individual had got into the fob, because I know those fobs for HESCO. For those who don't understand what HESCO is, do you want to explain what that means? That word means.
Hiscobacian is basically it's like chicken wire. It looks like chicken wire. It's very strong. It's a flat pack box. It's like Hiscobacian material and then wire. And as you open it up, and then it becomes this big empty box, and then the engineers will come fill it with the diggers with soil, earth, sand, and they're quite big. And if you stack them on top of each other, you can then make a perimeter wall around the fob, and that would then prevent any shrapnel, anything from flying through towards your camp. So if they're good and they can aim and they can hit their mortars inside your camp, then you're screwed. But it was basically just to form a big perimeter wall, and then they would stack, say, 2 lines side by side, and another one on top, and then you could have a big wall, that would provide you with protection. And they also use those Hiscobacian structures to make a watchtower, and then you would then operate from the heavy watchtower in the certain areas around the compound.
It's amazing how HESCO made me feel so safe. when it really was just so flimsy, and it is obviously what we use to build fobs, but when I look back now, I'm like, oh, I feel fine in here. I feel fine in this chicken wire, as if this is going to stop really anything from coming in. It's this false sense of security. Whatever it takes to make you feel good, man. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so talk to me what that's like, because I witnessed, I didn't go in and out of the fobs too often. But I'm witnessing the infantry units going in and out, day in and day out. And they would go out on these multiple day operations. They would do these day-long operations, but being so close to a town and being in such an area that was so full of violence. Let's talk about that.
So the first, before we flew in, we got broken up into these, they call it the chalks, which means just there's one group A, when they fly, there's one particular night, and then the next chalk or the next group would then fly. So I was on the second chalk, and we got tasked to fly the next night, but that got delayed because 2 soldiers got killed in the Sangin, in the fob that we flew into. So the first chalk went in, they got set up, and then that occurred. And it was a lad from, I think he was from Zimbabwe. They were, I think, Royal Marines. I can't remember. But we took over from the Royal Marines anyway. So they got killed. It was, I think, what they called an airburst RPG in the Sangin. So our flight got delayed by a day or so, and it was a horrible feeling, because we got ready to go and we got told, no, your flight is delayed because the fob that you're about to fly into, got attacked, and there 2 lads they got killed there. It's hard to explain. It's a horrible feeling, because you're about to fly into this area where they're actively attacking the base. And then eventually we flew in at nighttime. But prior to that, we had a quick sort of rehearsal. So as in what to do in the unlikely event that you got shot down, and you in this big metal bird, there's a big slowly flying this big massive target in the sky. And we got in, and I remember that night time I thought, shit, because I was one of the first ones to actually walk in on the tailgate. So you sit closer to the pilot, way in the, as you walk in the back, but then you turn around, you're far away from the tailgate. So I thought, crap, if we get shot down, I'm screwed. And I was sitting in my seat, and I remember looking to my right. I just saw this young Fusilier, this young kid looking back at me, and his eyes were like dinner plates. And he was young. I think it was 18, maybe 19, maybe 17. And I just thought, shit, if we could shut down, I really hope that he'd be able to help me. So if I'm injured, he'd be able to help me with first aid, you know. And I just thought,
Mhm.
shit, I'm screwed, because I could see the fear in his eyes. We were all um unsure what's going to happen, you know. Everyone had their own feeling, but I just felt this fear, this sensation of, shit, this is real. This is not Belfast. This is not Iraq. This is a whole different feeling. I just thought, shit, if we get shot down and I'm injured, I really hope to God that this kid can help me out. He can be able to drag me out.
Well,
That
because
was that thought I had with me.
how old were you at this point?
Oh, I think almost 30, in my early 30s, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
most kids that were rocking and rolling through there. I mean, when I went, I was 18. Most guys I served with were 18, 19, 20.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I can imagine that would be a little nerve-wracking for you, obviously, having a little more wherewithal and experience in the world, and then seeing this child across from you, so fearful. Yeah, that's something that you don't forget often.
No, they will stick me. They will be with me for a long time to come. And then we flew that night into Sangin, and we got closer, and on the outside I just saw this white light, and I thought it was an RPG, but it was the chopper shooting off the chaff that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a noisy landing, because as we were approaching the landing zone, each watchtower would then fire off into likely enemy positions to get their heads down, because prior to
Mm-hmm.
that they got attacked. And it was sensory overload, because with that very prominent sound of the chop of the Chinook, that you can barely hear yourself. And then once that land, you could just see traces flying all over the place, and the chaff going off. I just thought, shit. I just thought, okay, you're in the zone. Just training will take over. As soon as we landed, it was up and off, because you only had about, I think, 30, 40 seconds. We were told for you to get off, for the troops waiting there to get on, and then it takes off. And if you're too slow, you're going to miss your flight. So you're either going to stay on, or you're going to, those troops that's waiting, and they've been there for a while, 6 months, 4, 5, 6 months, they would stay there until the next chopper ride, So it was, and then it was full on, all the watchtowers shooting off in enemy positions. The enemy, I think we got attacked that night, but luckily we made it into the basement of the actual farm building that we had there. So it was a very interesting experience, flying into Sangin that particular night.
Yeah, it came in hot. It sounds like not only was it sensory overload, but the reality that this was not Ireland and the reality this was not Iraq. I mean, my God, more rounds had just went down range than both of your prior tours combined, just from trying to get into somewhere, let alone an entire deployment. So I'm sure
Yeah.
that was overwhelming. Once you guys got your feet under you and you started rocking and rolling, based off of a lot of your writing here, it sounds like there was some situations that were beautiful for sure, because you do a lot of writing about, the space itself, which is really fantastic. And you highlight the area, because I think we have this perception that all of these places are just holes in the ground and terrible places to go, and that they have no beauty and they don't hold any value, but they really do. They hold a lot of value to the world. And I'd love you to talk about some of the writing that you've written in this book about this amazing sketchy place you decided to go into for the first time in Afghanistan.
A lot of it was done well. It started with me trying to lock down all the contacts we had, because they attacked us so many times, at all these different hours. And I just thought to myself, I want to log it down. I want to log down the time, the type of caliber, when. And I started like to actually log it down. And a lot of the downtime was either spent either sleeping or eating or cleaning your weapon system, or you on guard duty, and that's about it. Maybe reading. And then I thought, I'm going to spend it. I want to log it down. I want to log down the amount of times we got attacked, because it was a lot. The first 20 days were just basically defending the compound.
Wow.
We couldn't leave the compound. We got there. We had no vehicles. It was just basically us, and there was a forward operating officers, the ones bringing in, guiding in the American Air Force to drop ordnance. We had a Royal Marine. There was medics attached to us as well, but no vehicles. But we couldn't leave the fob at that particular time. So the first 20 days, it was defending it from attacks from all sides at the same time, from your sniper fire, your mortar rounds, RPGs. It was horrendous. And I thought, I want to log that. And then it turned into me writing down how I felt at the particular time, So all these thoughts and feelings are then spilled on paper, whether I was angry or sad or reminiscing about my past, reminiscing about my family. And then that then evolved into me having this big journal of my thoughts and feelings about the place. Yeah, I still kept record of the amount of times that they attacked us, but I would only then put out, sniper fire at that particular time, and it took this long. But the rest of the journal was just filled with my thoughts and feelings. I think that was a way for me to decompress, not decompress, to offload, because it wasn't a time that it wasn't known to go over to your mate and then talk about poetry or talk about your writing. It was a known thing. No one would, I wouldn't dare go over to my mates and show them, oh, look at my journal. I just, I wrote about how I felt. It's about the sunset. I just kept all to myself.
Right.
I would then put it on paper to log it down, and it was my way of dealing with all the hell that we went through at that particular time.
I'd be curious to know how that would have gone if you did say something, because so many individuals utilize journaling now as a tool to decompress and to cope and to process. I wonder how much that would have helped individuals to have actually been able to have access to that tool. When I think back now about deployments and people who go through them, journaling and all these conversations have happened over the past, 5-10 years, where people are talking about different healing modalities and tools at their disposal. I think about how many people that probably could have helped if we were having those conversations during the beginning of Iraq and the real heavy hitting stuff, and the Afghanistan when it got really messy and really gnarly. Do you find that, and not to jump ahead here, but after all of these deployments, really, do you find that this was a tool that you utilized that really made a difference for you coming back to civilization?
Yeah. But it only helped in 2019. That's when I sat down. I thought, I'm going to write a bit about what happened. I'm going to then fill these pages. I knew that that I had to deal with certain things, but I wasn't sure when. I knew, because even after Afghan, I went through this funny stage of, I knew something was wrong, but I wasn't sure what it was. I felt really off. I couldn't put, I had no idea what it was, but it wasn't until 2019 that I actually, the universe kind of forced me to deal with it. It kind of sat me on my ass and said, Nev, you have to deal with this. And that's where writing came into play. That's where writing actually helped a hell of a lot. And I could then deal with those experiences, the thoughts, the feelings, the memories.
And all of the heavy things, you could really just tear it apart.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had to.
Okay, so sidetrack a little bit here. Did you by chance find any patterns of attack behavior when you were looking and writing down what weapons were being used and what they were attacking you with, and around the time frame they were doing it?
Oh yeah, it was RPGs, sniper fire, small arms fire, mortar rounds. But funny thing is it will always initiate the attack with someone in town riding a moped, because we were in the middle of Sangin, and we couldn't really see much unless you were a sniper team. You were based up on the roof. You could see some people, because the way that they constructed their sort of surrounding their buildings, they had all these walls, handmade walls. So the enemy had the upper hand, because at that time in Sangin town, all the population had left. All the shop owners, everyone had left at that stage, and there were no one there, literally no one except the Taliban. So they utilized that to use alleyways, because we couldn't see it. They were then dug tunnels to get from one, say, area to another area. They would utilize that as cover as well, and utilize that as firing point, because they knew our tactics. They knew that we couldn't leave the far field, because they would attack us at the you know, from all directions at the same time. But funny thing is, in the mornings we knew, because we got attacked a lot of times at the same time, and then they would initiate the attack by having someone on a moped driving, and then you could hear that in the distance, and then that's where all started at the same time, and then all hell would then break loose, you know. With it.
What was the plan? Because it sounds like you were dropped off somewhere to just maintain these walls, but what was the plan?
And I think the plan was to flush the enemy out once we could. It was up until sometime later that they brought in the Royal Marines with their Viking armored vehicles. They brought in I think it's the 82nd Airborne Division, the Americans, and then flew in, and that's where the whole operation started. Then that's when we had extra manpower, and we could start this big operation of getting out, starting, and then flushing out, going from one compound to the next compound and flushing out the enemy, you know. That was at that stage. But again, a lot of us, we were kept in the dark as into, you know, the bigger picture. We were just told, you there, hold your ground, and then later on we're gonna start with flushing out, doing patrols, foot patrols when possible.
How long were you at that fob before the Americans showed up with extra support?
About 3 months, I think it was. 3 months, I think it was. Yeah. Then they showed up. But by that stage, we were already defending the compound. We're there. I mean, like I said, the first 20 days, we're just basically defending the compound, you know, just trying to survive, you know. We're basically sitting ducks, to be honest.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds like there was no planning around this at all. They didn't want, it seems like they didn't want you to realize how bad of a situation you really were in.
We were bad. I think it's I believe to this day, you know, that's my personal opinion, that if it weren't for the American Air Force, I wouldn't be sitting here. You know, they flew in, and it was their B-1B bombers, and yeah, those pilots, I believe they saved our backside, you know, with the amount of ordnance. They definitely leveled a lot of the area around us, destroyed everything. I mean, the craters that was that they left. You could put a 2-story building in these craters, you know, but if it weren't for them, I don't know. I believe I wouldn't be sitting here.
No,
You know,
I don't doubt
they
it.
were accurate, you know. We're dropping the JDAM, you know, 500 pounds, 2,000 pound bombs, you know, and then witnessing that, sitting there, and go all quiet afterwards, and then the snipers would then see kids crawling in to go and retrieve the weapon systems or the dead Taliban, because they knew we won't be shooting the kids, and none of us did. The snipers would then see through their sights, they can see the movement, and they can see the kids coming. And so the Taliban would then send kids in there, because of the religion, they had to get the bodies and go and bury them. But also they could see them getting the weapon systems, getting the AKs and the ammo of the dead Taliban soldiers.
They did the Afghani fighters did a great job of utilizing small children on a lot of different ways to make us, you know, our moment of pause, where our empathy kicks in, where we can't imagine a child, you know, being strapped with anything, or a child having a weapon of any type, or utilizing it, right? The idea of utilizing child soldiers, you know, goes back way back. So after this deployment, I mean, well, you were in Helmand province too, so
yeah.
Let's talk about Helmand, because the British got rocked in Helmand, and they got rocked regularly and frequently. So let's talk about it.
Back then, thing is, the IEDs weren't a thing back then. It was just basically, you know, your small arms fire, your RPGs, snipers, small arms. It was until 2009 that my unit went back. I didn't go. I was on a different posting back then. But then the whole scene changed. It went from, you can do your patrol, you can gain ground rather quickly, but the IEDs, it wasn't a thing back then. It was basically spotting their snipers where they were going from compound to compound, and then flashing them out with the systems of. We had the Royal Marines in there, like I said, the Viking armored vehicles, and then we had the 82nd Airborne Division, and then we were given certain sectors. It was this big op that was going that went down that particular time. I remember the morning, it was pitch dark, and then that was the first time we actually left the front gates of that fob, you know. So we had a lot of help from those two areas going out. But things changed then in 2009. where it was whole different. My unit went back, like I said, and then on that particular tour, we lost, I think, 7 blokes.
Mm-hmm.
It's purely down to IEDs, you know. That was horrendous. I think that's probably the worst time for the Brits, that we lost so many. But the whole thing changed. It was basically IEDs, and that slowed a lot of the movement down, the speed at which they could gain ground. You know, it took ages just to clear one certain section. It was different then on that particular tour for the lads.
Yeah, the movement was slower, and the handheld metal detectors going through villages was just not enough. It was just not enough. It was not efficient. It wasn't effective. And then they started switching over to using plastics instead of anything that could be detected with the metal. And that's when things got really, really nasty. It got really, really nasty. I know Helmand was an area we were hearing regularly about, especially after I worked with the Brits in Panjwa district. We were hearing about it frequently. It was tragic because, like you said, it wasn't small arms fire. It wasn't anything like that. It was the nasty stuff. It was the big stuff. It was the stuff that did the damage to an entire unit, not just to, you know, getting shot in the leg and then being medevaced out. This was taking people off the face of the earth at a pace that was ridiculous. Yeah. So it sounds like your unit would have overlapped with some of the guys I was with then in 2009. You just weren't on that deployment.
No, I weren't. Because I know a lot of our blokes got attached to the rifles, and they went back to Sangin. I think they went to different fob. But at that time, yeah, we had Fob Jackson, and Fob Jackson got much bigger over that particular sort of deployment and the years that followed. But I would say so that there might have been a big overlap with some of my my friends that I deployed with, and because they got attached to the rifles at that particular time.
So when was your last deployment?
That was 2007. That was my last one. That was my last one. So I went back to Cyprus, and I think that's where it all started to change for me at that particular time in my life.
What was the turning point? What started to happen?
It was a particular day because I was part of the recce platoon, a recon platoon in Afghan, and we got back, and I knew something was wrong. I wasn't my usual self, and then I went on a PT run with my my platoon, and as we were normal running, just shorty t-shirts, your trainers, and then I just stopped halfway. I just thought, just bugger this. I don't want to do this, you know. And I remember my platoon sergeant looking at me, and he looked at me funny, and he said, "Jono, what's up?" You know, and I said, "I don't know." And then he told me just to go back to camp, you know, just fucking go back to camp, you know. And I just, it wasn't giving up. I just thought, I just had enough. Why am I doing this? What's it for? I think it was my body shutting down. I just had enough. And then I got a bollocking from him sometime later, the fact that I've done that, you know, but it was his words just fell on deaf ears, you know. I was being respectful, saying, you know, yes, Sarge, of course, yes, but I just thought something's up. And then someone else stepped in, I think it was an officer, he noticed something was up, and then he gave me this opportunity to go on a posting, to go and recruit for the British Army. And I think that was my saving grace. That helped, I think, a lot. And then once we left Cyprus, I went over to the UK, because we finished our 2-year tour there, went over to the UK, and I was there for a short time, and then I got posted with a different unit when they deployed with or helped various units with recruitment.
And did you find there that was enough of a decompression? The idea you didn't have to go back? Was that a non-deployable position?
Yeah, there was, but it was not. It was in London, where I got attached to a different unit from different regiments, different K badges, where we recruited for the British Army, and I think that was my saving grace.
When did you at all notice any of the psychological shifts?
Before that, but it wasn't until 2019, 2018 that I knew something was. I knew it was my I don't know who, but it was a higher force just forced me to deal with it, you know.
Right. Right. And so writing was one of the tools at your disposal. What else did you do that you found to be most effective when you were kind of going through this process?
I think writing was the only tool. I believe writing was it saved me.
Mhm.
I would say writing's definitely the thing that saved me. At that particular time, there was nothing else.
Wow. Did you have any sorry, you know the show, so you know I get uncomfortably personal with most people. Did you have any struggles in terms of alcohol or drugs that ended up being part of the issues afterwards?
I would say drinking. Drinking. It
Mm.
was especially at that time where COVID came into effect, and you couldn't do much. There was nothing else to do, and yeah, so it was basically, yeah, it was drinking for me. You know, it wasn't drugs, it wasn't anything else. It was the constant. I just have one tonight, you know. So we on lockdown, and it started from, you know, drinking a few nights during the week to every night. Then it started
Mm-hmm.
to go from, oh, it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, you know, it's fine. I'll have a quick one. I'm not at work, I'm at home, and then started, you know, drinking midday, and then you thought, wow, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm not doing much. Have a quick sneaky, you know, a
Mm-hmm.
quick drink, you know. Yeah. So if for me, it was the drinking, you know.
What brought the drinking to a halt?
I wouldn't say it brought me to a halt. It was probably drinking less. It was the fact
Ah.
that I've got my kids, and um just looking at them, just thinking, I don't want to let them down, you know, just their reaction, noticing, because especially during some dark times, they would see the anger in me, the aggression, and then I could see the fear in their eyes, thinking, shit, what the fuck am I doing? What are you doing, Neville? You would see, next, I've got 3 young kids. And then that broke me. That broke me. The fact that they would see this aggressive dad, you know, swearing, and because then I would then get to a moment where I would feel like I, I'm losing it, and seeing it in them, and then looking up to them, I thought, Nev, you got to change. You got to get some help.
Well, I'm really glad that you were able to see that foresight and you were able to look outside of yourself and see how your actions were affecting others, because a lot of times it happens too late, especially with children, right? A lot
Yeah,
of us are just trying to cope, and it's hard when you become a parent, and because you look up at your parents, like looking at your dad and looking at your mom, you know, you look up at them when you're younger, like, oh, they're your heroes, and when you see something happen with them, you can't quite understand what's going on because they don't seem like people
yeah,
to you. You know, your parents seem like, well, they're my parents, they're you know, authority, they're this, they're that, they're the example. But then when you start to become an adult and you have your own humans, you realize, oh, that's just a guy who decided to have kids and who still has a real life and real trauma and real things that happened in his life.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
you know, it's a different type of empathy you can then have for your parents later on down the road. But, you know, when you're children, you can't quite understand that. How do you have that conversation with your kids, or have you had a conversation with your children about this?
No, I haven't. They too young. Well, my
Yeah.
oldest daughter, oldest daughter, she's more aware. I think she's sussed things out. You know, she's quite clever. She knows. I've mentioned a few things to her, but I haven't really sat down with them and then discuss things, or talk about things. You know,
Yeah.
but she's quite switched on to things. She's aware of. I've been to war, and she's an avid reader. She loves reading, so she's read my book, and then I think there
Oh,
was more
wow.
of a connection. And Dad's got a book out, and she's seen it, and then there's the relationship got stronger with that, you know.
Yeah.
So she realized, well, hang on, okay, this connection of my dad went to war, you know, he's put these things out, but I would love to sit down with them and discuss and talk about it when they're a bit older, you know, when they're a bit more wiser, and they would understand a bit more, I think. And when the time comes, I'll definitely sit down with them and discuss a few things and talk about what I've been through, because I know what it feels like when you're going through that relationship and you really want to know more about what your dad went through, and you want to ask him all these questions, but that conversation is not there. It's never been there.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it feels like, not being able to sit down and talk and have that conversation for whatever reason, that they don't want to talk about it, but I want to be able to sit down, and I think telling my story and having my daughter or my son one day and my other daughter be able to read it, and it's I've done it for me, but then they can then sit back and read it, because when I'm no longer here, they can read and say, yep, that's my dad. That's what happened. Now I understand. Now the connection is there. But I won't be able to sit down with them and discuss it and talk about it, but then later on they can sit down in their own time and can read about my story, read about what I've been through and what it felt like for me.
It's a really selfless, beautiful thing that you're doing, not only by writing a book, but exposing your children to that side of you, because now, unlike with your father, they're going to have that opportunity you never had, being so willing and open to have those hard conversations, letting them know who their parents are, because ultimately, right, we are just people who have past lives before having humans. And I know exactly what you're talking about. That feeling of that conversation was never there. That was never an open ability. And it's funny because I still try to have those conversations with my dad. And it's always met with, well, how's the weather? It's never an open door. And I know it's, the way they're raised and the time frame they're raised and how that is. But I feel like so much of our history is lost with our war veterans, where they never felt comfortable enough to have those conversations with their children. So many stories have been lost. But this generation, with the GWOT war and everything, it seems like there's more writing coming out of this than I've ever seen out of anything else. And so I'm optimistic that maybe we don't have to keep repeating history, and that we can open our children up to these things. And there is a way to talk about the hard, difficult things. And maybe that will give them different types of resiliency, or down the road when things are really a struggle, they can look back and go, oh, it's not that bad. My dad's done this, I can do this. And you do, like I said at the beginning of this, you come from a long line of people who take accountability and show up as leaders for their families. So I'm stoked that you're being that honest and open with your children about it. It's not a difficult thing to do, because eventually they're going to read some of these things and go, oh, okay, well, dad had to experience these in order for these words to come out. And some of the writing you have is, well, the writing you have here is very emotional. And you can tell it's very personal and tied to something that you've experienced yourself. But that's, in my opinion, what makes this book so good. This book truly is, it tugs at my heartstrings in a way that, it's that silent nod of, hey, I know your vibe. I know what's happened to you. I know what you've had to experience. It may not be in the same way that I've experienced it, but there's an understanding. There's a silent understanding of what it means to go to a place and pull triggers on people that are just like you and I. And how authentically, honestly, and openly you were willing to write is expressed in this book. And I hope that so many people go and grab it. I hope that you continue to write, because I think you have something special here. And not everyone can write books. I think everyone can try to write books, but not everybody can evoke emotion, thought, feeling, and really a place of going back. I mean, I love that the way you named it, Then and Now. I love how you tied it in the way that you did. I love the photos you put in it, and just how vulnerable you were in writing this. I'm super stoked on it, man, and I'm so glad that you did it. So thank you for that, honestly.
No, yeah, thank you. It was. I felt that I had to, and I've done it for me. It saved me. It saved me when I believed nothing else could at that particular time. I just had to. There was this instant connection when I came across that first sort of journal entry, and when I spoke my thoughts and feelings on that paper, and there was this instant connection, because I never believed to myself that I could do that. I still have these moments where other people could see it in me. They could see, he's got the ability, he can do it, he's got the confidence, but I couldn't see it within myself. Mm-hmm. That was with the writing, and I couldn't see it with myself. I never believed that I could even put pen to paper. I mean, English is not even my first language, it's Afrikaans is my first language, and I thought I can't do that, it's not for me. I didn't believe myself. I could never see myself as as a writer, as a poet, or even a soldier back then, that I could actually do that. I could deploy that. I could go out and fight and serve a purpose and have a sense of duty. I could never see it within myself. I believe it's not me. Let someone else go and do it. But I did it. But I had to at that particular time. In in order to evolve and grow and then recover and be the dad that my kids deserve, be the husband that my wife deserve, and be the brother and be the son that they deserve. But in order for me to heal, in order for me to move on and deal with these issues and then have a look at them, instead of turning my back on it, I would then face it. Because like I said, I was forced to address these issues, and because I knew that I had to at one particular point in my life, but I had no idea when. I wish I knew. I wish any of us knew when the day would come, the time, the place, the location, where we can deal with these issues.
Writing this and going through this process, if there's a vet that's listening to this who's feeling stuck, lost, confused, frustrated, what would your advice be?
Reach out. Just take a step forward. Put pen to paper, go for a walk, do something that would change that routine, that self-destruction. It doesn't have to be writing. It doesn't have to be a novel. It could be anything. Just take that initial step and not give up.
I love it, man. I'm glad that you found this tool while you were on deployments. It seems like it was the thing that carried you through. And now with your humans, it's funny because sometimes when I hear people talk about what was the thing that pulled you out of it, it's never really your family. And it doesn't mean that in a non-selfish way. It just shows that you can't save yourself for other people. You have to save yourself for yourself.
Mm.
Right? And then it seems like it's always one of these modalities. It's writing, it's running, it's throwing yourself into some type of sport or film. It's you're throwing yourself into something creative, something that's an output, something that is an external push, getting it off of your body and into the world. I'm stoked that you found it when you did, because I believe you truly when you say it was the thing that saved you. And to not only see it be the thing that saved you, but now the thing that's setting your future up and propelling you forwards. I think that's the most beautiful thing. I expect more writing out of you. Is that something the rest of our listeners can expect?
Yes, I'm currently working on a few projects, so there's definitely more writing in the works. I feel like I can't stop now. It's at the floodgates. Yeah, it's open.
Yeah,
and there's more to come. There's definitely more to come.
I'd love to hear a memoir from you. Oh, dude, I'm telling you, I think you have something really special. You have a very unique childhood. And I think that you have like you said, a life of service. So I think there's something I would love to see a memoir from you, more poetry, whatever you've got, keep putting it out there and we'll keep supporting it and keep buying it and keep pushing it, because the authenticity in your writing is what we need in this world. We don't need more books. We need more authentic writers and more vulnerable writers. So thanks for continuing to put that out and be willing to put yourself out there. Where can everyone find your writing? Where can they buy this awesome book here with Dead Reckoning Collective? Where can people come and support you and what you're trying to achieve?
Dead Reckoning, they've got the book on there, Amazon or any good online bookshop. Be able to find it there.
Social media?
Social media, yep, on Facebook, on Instagram. I can forward you the details.
I'll get it.
And it's all on there. It's all on there.
Awesome.
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Amazon, it's all on there.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll make sure that we put everything in the show notes and in the bio for you guys to go grab a copy of this book. Highly recommend it. Really do pretty much love the majority. I would say 99% of what comes at A Dead Reckoning. I love all of it. I don't really can't think of a moment where I was like, yeah, I didn't like anything that's come out of them. So, I'm glad to see you found a home with a great publisher that really believes in vulnerability and people's willingness and cultivating writers. They seem to be so willing to help others thrive. And it is helping to save our community. So we are here to support always. Thanks so much for being on the show. You stick with me. Everyone else, that's Neville Johnson. We will see you all next week.